All right, go ahead and call the meeting to order. 6:04 and ask for roll call, please.
Sand City,
Here.
County of Monterey, Seaside,
Here.
Marina Coast,
Here.
Delray Oaks,
Here.
Salinas,
Here.
Pacific Grove,
Here.
Castroville,
Here.
Monterey,
Here.
Veranda.
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right, we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. I'll ask Mayor Donson.
Right here. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mayor. With that, I'll ask for additions to the agenda.
No additions.
All right, seeing none, move on to number 5, approval of agenda. Move approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. We'll take it out to the public. Anybody in public wish to speak on this item? All right, we have one caller on Zoom.
We will now hear from caller ending in phone number ending in 312. Go ahead, please, if you can state your name for the record.
And just to clarify, this is for additions to the agenda. This is not general public comment.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. I thought it was.
No worries. All right, anybody else have public comment on additions to agenda? All right, we'll bring it back to the board. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Move on to item number 6, public comment. So this is for items that aren't on today's agenda. So we'll go ahead and open it up for public comment at this time.
Okay. We will go ahead and hear from Michael Bear. Go ahead, Mr. Bear.
Good evening, everybody. It's been a while since I've been here. I have a question. It's related to the outfall. So you have a couple items on the outfall, 7K and 10.
Mr. Bear, if it's related to the outfall, I would just ask that you wait till we get to that item.
Right. It's not specifically to what you're talking about, but it's adjacent because it's outfall. So if you want me to wait till 10A, I can wait till 10A.
Yep, let's just hold tight for that and we'll get to that as soon as we can.
All right. Thank you.
All righty. Anybody else? All right, seeing none, we'll bring it back to the committee and move on to consent agenda.
Motion to move.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. We'll bring it out to the public. Anybody in the public wish to speak on any of the items on consent agenda?
Okay, we will now hear from phone number ending in 0312. If you can please state your name for the record. Go ahead.
Good evening, Margaret Ann Coppernall calling. I want to ask you to please pull consent item 7K because this action is premature, in my opinion. Cal-Am's desal project does not
Ms.
have
Coppernall,
the goal.
if you want to pull item K, I'll just ask you to hold your comments and we'll pull it and I'll do separate public comments on that one, okay?
Oh, thank you. I'm
Yep.
sorry, I'm getting confused here.
No worries. I appreciate you calling in. I'll circle back with you as soon as we get back to that item. Okay, any other public comment?
Do we need a substitute motion to remove K from the consent agenda?
Yeah, unless the motion maker wants to amend it and then secondary quiz it.
Yes, I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve all but item K.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. With that, we'll move on to item K, which is to approve increasing a contract with Brown and Caldwell for outfall improvement projects for the Monterey Peninsula Water Supply Project of $220,780 for a not to exceed amount of $1.5 million. And with that, I will pass it to Bob for staff presentation.
Staff presentation, yes, and I didn't even bring the agenda item. But
You
yes,
can wing it. I have full faith in you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Williamson and members of the board. So you approved the outfall capacity negotiation, cooperation, and funding agreement with Cal-Am in September of 2023. Had two tasks: outfall improvements, which is this item, 7K, and the NPDS permit, which will be action item 10A. So you also approved a contract then with Brown and Caldwell, I believe is December of 2023, and then an amendment in 2024 to include, to go to 60% design on the land. Sorry. Yeah. To go to 60% design on the inland portion of the work, mostly the liner project, and to go to the basis of design report / 30% design for the offshore portion. Now that offshore portion has been completed, and this is an amendment to go to the 60% design for the offshore portion. The onshore portion, 60% design should be completed sometime in July. And yeah, I'd recommend that or ask that you approve this amendment of $220,780 for a total of $1,456,511 for Brown and Caldwell to do this work. And I'd be happy to answer questions.
Thanks, Bob, for the presentation. Any questions from the board? All right, seeing none. Oh, is that a hand? I think
Well,
that was a
yeah, I'm just trying to formulate this question. So would we have to redo this sort of work at some point in the future to accommodate other users of the outfall? Because we know there's 2 other proposed and contemplated projects that would or could use the outfall, one from the Salinas Valley Basin GSA and one from Rainier Coast Water District. Would any of this work in this amendment have to be repeated? Sort of work. I don't mean the identical, but.
So in terms of, yeah, so this is the outfall improvements. So in terms of the outfall improvements in the future, either or both of those projects came in. There likely would be changes in the number of diffusers that were open. And there might possibly be some kind of minor changes to the brine mixing structure, but very, very little change to this part of the work. NPDS permit, it would be a different story because it'd be different volumes, different water quality, and they need to do a lot more modeling to see the dilutions and make sure that the ocean plan requirements are met.
So this is to cover onshore work.
This amendment is just for the offshore, going from 30% to 60% design.
And the design of the offshore portion of the outfall. So the ports and the diffusers and the gasket in the end gate and any other joint protection, et cetera. Oh, probably also the lining, if there's anything.
No, so everything else includes
The lining is.
the brine mixing structure, lining the whole land outfall, and all the replacing the gasket seals within the first 2,000 feet of the ocean outfall.
Those are all onshore?
Onshore. The work would be done from onshore.
Thank you for that answer.
Any other questions? All right, we'll take it out to the public. Any members of the public wish to speak on this item? If you're on Zoom, you can use the raise hand function. See Mr. Bear.
We will now hear from Michael Bear. Go ahead.
Yeah, so my understanding is I didn't hear anybody mention Cal-Am desal plant, but this whole project is around retrofitting with the sleeve and all of that. so that brine can be passed through the outfall because of the desal plant. And I guess there's other users. So my question is, you're spending $250,000 for a project that may not happen. There's, it's been 12 years in the making, and they have a lot of things with the Coastal Commission, a lot of things to check off, including this one. But does it make sense? I'm just asking the board as a whole to be spending $250,000 for a desal plant retrofit on the outfall, which I would say is a coin flip at this point if it ever actually gets built, seriously gets built. So I'm just questioning the timing of it. If it needs to happen for these other projects, I don't know about them, that's fine. But if you're really talking about designing the sleeve and designing all this stuff, how much of that, is for a project that may or may not happen? Thank you.
Okay, we will now hear from Susan Scavone. Go ahead, Ms. Scavone.
Good evening. Thank you. This is premature, and also all up this particular outfall project that's going on with this increase. That's a lot of money to spend for something that's really not quite decided yet. It's still in limbo. I'm going to make a further comment when we get to item number 10. But I do think you should put the brakes on it. It's really too early. It's premature. There are so many permits and the decisions that have not been made yet. Why are you spending all of this time and energy from M1 working with CalArm on something that they're going to make us pay for? Every time you increase this contract, we're paying for it. Okay, I'll comment further later, but thank you.
We will now hear from phone number ending in 0312. Go ahead, please state your name for the record.
Good evening, Margaret Ann Coppernoll calling. I concur with Michael Bear and Susan Schiavone with their comments, because I do think this action is premature because CalArm's desal project does not have the go-ahead. It is manifestly unfair, in my opinion, to the ratepayers to be saddled with this bill way before this project has received full approval. This is a question of trust. How can you put this on the consent agenda when the project is not on solid ground? Will the ratepayers be reimbursed when the project falls through? Something is terribly wrong here. That's why I'm complaining. I vehemently object to this action and the expenditure. And, if you want to spend the money on the old infrastructure that needs to be refurbished, that's one thing. But on this particular item and the cost associated with it is unfair to the ratepayers. So thank you for allowing me to speak to you this evening. God bless you and thank you.
And we will now hear from Omol. Go ahead, please. And you are muted. Omol, go ahead. Okay, he lowered his hand. I'm going to go ahead and now go to Anna Thompson. Go ahead, Ms. Thompson.
Yes, Anna Thompson, Carmel. I concur with the prior speakers. This is premature. Stop with running more expenses for something that probably eventually is not going to happen anyway, because it's not what we need, has not been approved, the desal plant. So why waste your time and our money? Thank you.
Okay, we are going to go out to Omol. Go ahead.
Hi, yes, it's Kate Mulligan in Harding Street at Seaside. This rate keeps going up and you keep spending money into the future and we're not seeing any benefit, and we're dealing with power outages and we're dealing with water breaks. Why don't we use that money to fix up what we've got problems with now instead of creating a problem for the future. Thank you.
And I think that's it on Zoom. So I'll go ahead and bring it back to the committee or the board, please.
So since this seems to be tied pretty heavily with agenda item 10A, I'll just move that we take it up after we complete item 10A. I don't know how the board's going to vote on that item, but they're pretty related. Just to move it on the agenda.
Is there a second? I just have a clarifying question for staff. How outside of the obvious that it's the same project, big picture project, how are these two connected with each other?
Are you saying
10A
10A
and
The,
7K?
7K?
Yeah.
I mean, they're connected because you approved the outfall capacity negotiation, cooperation, and funding agreement in September of 2023. And this work, both the 10A and this are direct result of that. There's no cost to the ratepayers. It's entirely paid for through a deposit from CalAm.
Well, I'd probably clarify one thing. It is paid for by CalAm ratepayers, but
It's
I
not
think the distinction that I'm looking for is, does approval of one impact the approval of the other?
From an administrative standpoint, I don't think it impacts the other. This 7K does not impact 10A.
Okay.
Either can move forward independently or in conjunction with one another, because I think we have time on it.
Okay.
Now, CalAm certainly would like to move forward expeditiously on all aspects of the project, including this design, as well as 10A, which is, as we get to it, the report of waste discharge going to the regional board. But they're not inextricably linked.
Okay. I mean, I have some concerns and I understand where some of the folks that are calling in are coming from. But I think that conversation can be saved till we get to 10A, and especially given that there wasn't a second. Is there an alternative motion?
Make a motion to approve.
All right, so moved.
Item K.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Move on to item number 8, committee reports. 8A is Recycled Water Committee. Is there a motion?
Move approval of the minutes.
Second. All right, we'll bring it out to the public. Anybody in the public wish to speak on this item? All right, seeing none, I'll bring it back to the committee. Any last comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Moving on to 9A. Is this the one, Charlie, that you were talking to me about? Yes. We're going to open a public hearing on this item. This is to consider adoption of resolution number 2025-12, declaring liens against real property for delinquent sewer user charges. With that, I will pass it to Paul.
I'm just going to do a brief introduction. Lindsay, are you prepared to talk also? Okay. So as you all know, we've been doing this for years. As we have people who are not paying their bills, we do at this time of year put a lien on the property through the county. And this year is a little unusual from the standpoint, I think the vote earlier this year to not move to the tax rolls may have confused some of our customers. So we did the best we could and told everyone we're staying with the billing as is, which then means those that haven't paid the bills will be going to the tax rolls. This item is the public hearing for that. You have before you the list of everyone. I would like to turn this over to Lindsay Sinstaby, who is our customer service supervisor and has the most knowledge on this process. Thanks, Lindsay.
Good evening, Chair Williamson and Board. I'm Lindsay Sinstaby, the customer service supervisor, and this is our annual lien listing for customers who have a delinquent balance of 2 billing periods at the end of the calendar year. We do 3 notifications as well as a regular bi-monthly billing. And upon the end of this is when you all vote, and then we would add it to the tax. We do accept payments all the way through to the day that we file the lien. So if customers still can send in their payments up until then.
Perfect. Thank you for the staff presentation. Bring it to the board for any questions. All right, seeing none. Oh, please go ahead.
For Paul, you mentioned that we've been doing this for years. Can you just clarify that again for the constituents?
Certainly. At least since I've been here, for the 11 years I've been here, every year we have done this process, putting a number of the accounts on the tax roll. I just want to, it's in here, but you'll probably note there's a little over 2,900 accounts that are attached to this for a tune of almost $2.5 million. So it is substantive when we talk about the amount of money that is not being paid to the agency. In terms of how long we've done it, I'm going to go back to Lindsay because she's been in customer service much longer than I have.
So I started in 86 and we were doing it then. It's part of the health and safety code due to the fact that we cannot shut off the service.
Yeah.
We are then in turn put our fees on the tax bills to collect for non-payment. So I think ever since the agency started in the late 70s, right after they started collecting their own fees is when they started filing liens on the property.
And what's the process of notification?
Notification is
You're just speaking to the microphone, I
Oh.
think. Sorry.
Notification is
Simple.
3 actual delinquent notices to the customers as well as their regular bi-monthly bills. And then the names are posted in the newspaper as notification for the public hearing, but we do have customers call us after that who were not aware. So that is actually a good notification for customers during that process.
Great. And then during the process, are we helping them sort of navigate how to pay you back or
Yes,
what's
yeah,
the
we work with
process?
them. We just, a lot of the customers on this list choose to have this happen every year. They have been on the list every year since I've been here. That's just the way they choose to have their fees added to the tax bill. With customers who call us, we help them. We work with penalties. We explain the situation and work with customers that this is new to. A majority of the customers, as I mentioned, this is just part of their process of paying. So there's about a couple hundred a year that this may be new to. Or, and then we also notify landlords in case their tenants aren't paying. So we discuss that with the landlords and help them as well.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
So this sets up one follow-up question that I have. When we send the notification, that goes to the individual receiving the bill, or at what point does the landlord get involved, and how do we know we have the correct address for the landlord?
So at the very beginning, I print out the list and we go through the list and check every single parcel against the record with Monterey County and how it's recorded. The owners have we have separate abilities to add the owner. And sometimes we have more than one address for the owner. So one owner sometimes will send 2 or 3 just so that we're sure they're getting it. And then the owner gets a copy and the tenant from the very beginning of the delinquent noticing. So we go through the list in the middle of February, and we send the first delinquent notice in March, and the owner gets it then. So from the very beginning, the owner is included in the delinquent notice process.
One final question that I have, and I'll pass it over to Tom. How many hours would you say staff spends on this process?
We spend, in the beginning, it takes several hours to go through the list because there's thousands of them. So we probably spend altogether about probably 3 weeks of staff time. A lot of my time is spent on this. I do most of it. I prepare the lists. Our handling fee, we did a study, and the handling fee we charge of $30 covers all of our time.
Okay. Thank you for that.
You're
Please,
welcome.
Yeah, so I notice on the list, there is someone called Virtue Flor de Salinas that actually has 2 entries, and they're 2 of the largest entries. One is $60,000 and the other is $9,000. From that name, they would appear to be commercial entities. Hey, and those seem to be really large amounts. Is there anything we've tried to get any of this out of them besides putting this on the lien? Because my concern would be they go bankrupt and they are on some worthless piece of property and we get nothing of this $60,000 or $69,000 despite the lien having been placed on the property.
Sure. So they are actually a condo. The biggest one is 250 units. The other one is a smaller unit. They're kind of all together, but they did split the parcel some. The associations are who are not paying that. So that will get filed right on the taxes, and then they do have the money because they are collecting it from the owners. So I'm not quite sure what, there you have them. We have a code in there that it might be selling. So I don't know what they're doing with that. But it is actually a residential parcel.
Since it's a homeowners association, do they actually, I mean, we're leaning the property that's not owned by the homeowners association?
No, we are. Actually, we would lean the common area that is owned by the association. So we couldn't assess onto that. And the tax bill that we're billing them for their user fees is also, has assessments for taxes. So it is safe for us to lean on that property tax bill if they don't pay. They still have time to pay.
But it would potentially be just the common areas of the condo complex, correct?
It would be filed on the common area, but the fees would be due from the association, which is who owns that portion of the common area.
Okay.
That property is owned, each of those units is owned by the same owner.
Mm.
That floor, it's not owned by the, certain tenants. They own them all and rent them out. So we aren't going to have a bunch of homeowners that have paid their association dues and then are going to have this lien. It is people who are paying them rent. They're just choosing not to pay our fees.
So liens go against property, but if someone owes us $69,000 and the only property against which that lien goes is worth $1,000, we end up losing substantially. And I have no idea what the legal intricacies are of that complicated. And thank you for trying to suss through all of that in that rather complicated circumstance. But I'd love for, not necessarily right now, but for legal to weigh in on, in that particular instance, is there enough value in the property that this lien process is essentially effective? And the reason I raise that concern is to get into us for 60 grand. I don't know what their thinking is, but maybe they're thinking, well, they can lien us and all they'll do is take our common areas and that's only worth 10 grand. So we're up 50 grand. I don't know what their thinking is, but love to hear a legal opinion at some point in the future on that.
All right, oh, please go ahead.
Yeah, just real quick. Paul, you had mentioned that there was some confusion based on our attempt to put the fees on the tax rolls. How prevalent do you think that is?
So I have only heard it from a handful of emails that I have seen. I'm going to defer to Rachel and or Lindsay to see if to see how many calls came in or other questions. I just have heard it once, like I said, a handful, but it was enough if it got up to me that I know it's out there.
The customers have been receiving their bi-monthly billings as they always did. And for the first few months, we put messages on the bill. Rachel's department did a whole mailer to everybody. And so basically at this point, in the beginning, we made sure that we didn't penalize the customers for several billing cycles so that the customers who didn't know were not penalized. So at this point, it's basically the group that we always lien, which is, and then some others, but I mean, they've been pretty well notified.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm sorry, just one other follow-up. Is that $60,000 the largest single amount on the list?
It's one of the higher ones. I do tend to go through them. I'm a little obsessed, I admit it.
Yes, please.
So I have a quick one. So on this list, what would you say the percentage more or less would be that people that are actually doing this on purpose to wait for it to come out on the tax roll?
It's about, I think we did it, it's around, I want to say about 68 to 70% of the same people every year. Some people have financial issues and could be liened one year and never again. Some people think that they don't have to pay the bill because it's included in their mortgage. We've had that happen a few times, which it is if you're liened, but normally it's not. So sometimes it's just, customers are a little confused, but apart from that, it's mostly, like I said, the same group of people.
Thank you.
Anybody else? I'm gonna go ahead and call the question. All those in favor?
Do you have a motion?
Oh, was there not?
I move approval.
Sorry.
Second.
We're going to public comment.
Oh,
Sorry, I got ahead of
Alex is on
myself
here.
there. Thank you for.
Still move approval.
All right, we're going to go to public comment. Pastor Richai.
We will now hear from Alex Miller. Go ahead, Mr. Miller.
Yes, thank you. Yes, certainly public comment is so important here. The agency went around last year and advertised the tax roll change. Went around all the cities, all the jurisdictions, put money and resources into convincing people that it was the right move. Spent time and resources advertising and campaigning for the tax roll to be placed on the tax roll or bill. And at the last minute, a few board members decided that was not the right move. And so it failed. And now, as a consequence, we're basically saying to 3,000 people on the peninsula, our neighbors, we're basically saying, hey, here's the middle finger. And I just don't think it's the right move to lien this year, considering what the agency just went through for the last year and a half, 2 years. So I hope that the board will consider not doing the liens this year and doing it maybe in a subsequent year when the agency has put resources into telling people that we're going back to the billing per month. And one of the reasons why this board wanted to put it on the tax roll, one of the reasons was because of the third-party vendor billing issues that we had. And those are the same people that are sending out these notices. And some people aren't getting them. If 60% are always liened, that means that 40%, roughly 1,500 accounts, are not regularly liened. And those people can and could be convinced that their bill was supposed to be on the tax, and they're confused. So I really hope that the agency takes a look at this list, and thank you to Director Moore for pointing out the biggest number, 60,000. But Mr. Moore, look at the smallest numbers: $200, $230, $240, and we're putting a permanent lien onto their property and charging them $35 from the agency and $35 from the county to get that lien removed. $70 for the people in Seaside. I think some people just can't afford it. So I really hope that the board will consider this year. I'm not talking about in the future, but for this year, say no to the liens. Let's get the billing back in order and tell people that we're going to bill them monthly or bi-monthly. Thank you.
Okay, we will now hear from Michael Bear. Go ahead, Mr. Bear.
Hello, I just wanted to weigh in on Dr. Moore's question, and I guess it relates to the whole thing. That as a businessman, they may just find it more convenient to just allow it to pass through to the tax bill. And also, if it takes longer to collect the money, from your point of view, as a businessman, you want to hold on to the money as long as you can. So it might be to their advantage, even paying the $70 additional, to hold on to that money for as long as they can. And then they don't really have to do the paperwork either. It just passes through, it's done, and they got to hold on to that money longer. So just my 2 cents on that. That's it.
Okay, with that, we'll go ahead and close public comment and bring it back to the board. I think there was,
Chair Williamson, you
Oh.
have a public hearing, so you need a motion to close the public hearing.
thank you. Is there a
Move to
motion?
close the public hearing.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed unanimously. Thank you to our attorney for keeping me on track here. Is there a motion regarding the action?
Move the approval.
Is there a second? Moved and seconded. Any other discussion?
Is the, just, looking at these, at the amount they're being owed, I see, there are a few that are down the $200 to $300 range, which 200 is about 2 billing cycles, correct?
Depends on.
Depends,
they're
but
from.
yeah.
Okay, two quarters. I mean, no, not
2 months.
like 2 months. I mean, not, yeah, I don't mean, sorry.
Actually, it's 2 billing cycles, which would be 4 months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Two billing cycles is 4 months?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Right.
So,
Oh.
okay, well,
Even
between 1 and 2 quarters. The most of these I see are really 800 or so on up, and that's where you start getting into closer to a year at that point. So I wonder why we have set the policy on 2 billing cycles instead of 3 or 4, because I mean, there is a point there that it is a very small amount, and who knows, I mean, somebody could be in a hospital or whatever else, there aren't a lot of those out there. And it's not a significant amount of money, and I don't know what percentage. Do we have any idea of how many of these are under 400 or 500?
I certainly don't. I'm going to ask Lindsay to come up because I want to answer your other question of how do we get to the 2 billing cycles? And for years, I'm going to say it was at least 25 or 30 years, it was 1 billing cycle if they were behind on. We did move, I want to say in 2018-ish, maybe. We did extend to the 2 billing cycles for the reason you're identifying of like, oh, it's relatively small compared to the fees. So that was a decision by a previous board to move to that 2 billing cycles. We have not revisited that since, but in reference to what percentage is 2 billing cycles or below, I don't know. Do you know the percentage overall? Sorry.
Some of those could be businesses which we charge less for. So they may not be residential because the business rate is lower. So that could be 6 months worth of businesses. It's very few residents that get 2 billion cycles behind. And also tomorrow is the due date. So a lot of those people on that list will actually pay the bill within the next couple of days. So the lower ones may actually just get paid. People just tend to wait till the due date in order to make the payments.
But Supervisor Church, we can probably look at at the data and say how many are $500 and under, and just look at the percentage and get you that later if you'd like.
Yeah.
But in remembering though that these customers, this is their delinquent amount through the end of December. They still owe us now.
Yeah.
Through June or July, because we just billed Salinas. So their accounts are accruing. So it could very well be next year that they would have the whole year. So as far as penalties and stuff go, you don't want to keep balances going too long because then the penalties, of course, would be much higher.
And I would offer maybe we could just have that data included in the report next year, assuming we don't transition to the tax rolls, and we can look at what the options are as far as changing the policy. But there's no point of wasting too much energy on it, I don't think, if there is a transition. So I think we have a motion. Was it seconded?
Yes.
Who seconded?
One of these guys. Oh,
One of these
funny.
guys.
I can't tell which one.
Somebody take it. All right.
Stefani.
Oh, Stefani, thank you. Any other comments?
Yep.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. With that, we'll move on to item number 10A. Consider authorization to submit an amended report of waste discharge to the regional water quality. I'm gonna try this again. Waste discharge to the regional waste. No, I'm gonna get this. The Regional Water Quality Control Board to amend M1W's National Pollution Discharge Elimination System permit. I should have just used acronyms.
So, thank you, Chair Williams. I'd like to just do a brief intro on what we've done in the past on this and then turn it over to Bob. So many of you remember back in September, this came before the board to submit a report of waste discharge, ROWD, to modify our current permit with the regional board. At the time, staff had stated I stated my discomfort with it. It wasn't quite up to par on what we typically would submit, but we had an agreement with CalAm where we said we would work on this and submit it within a time frame. So we did that. Subsequently, the regional board sent a letter saying the application was incomplete. And since that period of time, our staff, CalAm, and the consultants have been working to make it a complete application. That has resulted in a number of tangible changes to the proposed project, different modeling, et cetera, which Bob can go over. But I just want everyone to remember that we've been doing this for a while, and this is the second bite at the apple for us. So after Bob tells you about the specifics, I'll go into some other details on what we have looking forward after whatever decision you make.
Yeah. Okay. So Chair Williamson and members of the board, Bob Holden, principal engineer. So as stated before, the board approved the outfall capacity negotiation cooperation funding agreement with CalAm back in September of 2023. We talked about the other task of outfall improvements. This task is the NPDES permit part. So the report of waste discharge, or ROWD, is essentially an application for an NPDES permit. So you approved sending that to the regional board, the ROWD, in September, while you accepted offer by CalAm to submit a technical and environmental analysis of a larger brine storage pond. That was partly to respond to concerns of staff. So in January, we did get the letter from the regional board saying that it was incomplete. That's attachment 1 on page 302. That report that you requested as part of your approval is shown as attachment 2, page 306. So after we got the incomplete letter from regional board, which mostly had to do with the rather large and unusual pressure relief structure at the very end of the outfall, CalAm's consultants, along with our consultants, worked quite hard to come up with an alternative that would not need that structure. So, I should mention that, then all of our responses to the incomplete letter from the regional board are in attachment 3, page 359. So everything else in this report of waste discharge is new, except for an aerial map, attachment 10 on page 524. So the main changes, Chai, could you show that one slide, please? Yeah, so again, ROWD is what you approved back September last year. ROWD amended or addended, whatever, on the right. So relief structure, it had it last time, now it doesn't. Adding 2 extra pipes to the end of the outfall, 2 new diffusers, big concrete thrust block, and kind of intricate door were in the last submittal. They're not there now. End gate before had to be removed, mostly cut off and replaced. Now it just has a gasket put under it to keep brine from flowing directly onto the ocean floor underneath it. And just that change in the end gate then means that we don't need the thrust block or the door. So we went Previously, we were asking for 168 open diffuser ports. They're currently 129. What we're now asking for is 158. So leaving 10 diffuser ports plugged, so they're available for future expansion or other use. Minimum brine discharge in the previously was 3.35 million gallons a day. That's been increased to 5.8 million gallons a day to make it all work well and within the pressures that the pipe can easily take. The dilution, the minimum dilution with brine was 150. Now it's going to be 101. The dilution in our current permit without brine is 145. The dilution without brine in the new permit will be 194. So that will increase. So fiscal impact, all consultant and staff fees to prepare this document are paid for by CalAm. The regional board's review costs are part of the fee M1W pays for the current NPDS permit. If the permit is amended, M1W's annual fee would increase by about $60,700 per year based on the increased flow, and that would be paid for by CalAm. I ask that you authorize submittal of this ROWD addendum to the Regional Water Quality Control Board, and I'd be happy to answer questions.
Thank you for the president.
Oh, I
yes.
just want to
Yep.
add on to
yes, sorry.
Bob's presentation. So as you all know, this has been an ongoing process and will continue to be an ongoing process. I wanted to just put some context into some of the previous comments that had occurred on item 7K. As you all know, or I believe, there's been a CPUC proceeding that is looking at supply and demand, particularly demand in the area. That has not been approved. That has been rescheduled for hopeful final approval July 24th. So at this point in time, there is a bit of an unknown there. I guess I don't believe it actually changes the modeling or the report of waste discharge itself. The only thing it would change is what's the plant going to ultimately be, and how would the brine storage be operated? Is that a fair statement, Bob?
Yes, I think so.
Okay. So there are some unknowns, and I think we just need to acknowledge that. Secondly, even if this moves forward, please understand that we have a long road before us. I'm not including all the other stuff CalAm's doing, but just with us, in terms of if we're doing a project on our outfall, just easements that will be necessary to get permits. This would still need to go to the Monterey Bay Marine Sanctuary. We would need to amend our coastal development permit, whether that be through Marina or the Coastal Commission. Then we have to amend a state lands lease. Obviously, the designs need to be complete. What you just approved earlier is to get the ocean side of the designs up to 60%. And then we would ultimately need to get a long-term agreement going. Something that is somewhat unknown, at least from my perspective, and I'll let Bob address it if he can or wants to, is we would need to get an industrial waste permit agreement with CalAm, because those 3 million gallon ponds discharging to us, obviously meeting the ocean plan is one thing, but we need to comply our own people with industrial waste permits. So there's a lot of stuff going on. And at this point, there are some unknowns going into it. But as Bob stated, the package itself is far better than the incomplete one we submitted back in September. That frankly was an embarrassment to me. So I think we're in a better position. But did you want to add anything to that in terms of steps forward and things that we have to do and some of the unknowns to provide context for what is likely to be comments?
No, I think, yeah, it's far better, for lots of reasons. And no, I'd be happy to answer questions. That's easier way to do it.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. Any questions? Please.
What? I heard the phrase, the first go around was not complete. So is this now complete?
Yes.
Please.
So what's this amended report of waste discharge is based on a certain amount of brine to be discharged.
Correct.
And that was an input to the design process, correct?
Yes.
And what was that million gallons per day? 6 point something, 4 point something? What was it?
Well, it goes up to 8.66 million gallons a day. Currently, the minimum is 5.8 million gallons a day. But yes, all the data on the water quality, the volumes, and everything else were provided by CalAm back in September of 2023 or so, at the beginning of the process.
So this entire design that we're proposing in this amended report of waste discharge contemplates something between a 5.88 MGD and a 8.66 MGD of brine.
Discharge, yes, during a 24-hour period, which is why, yes, I
Well, that's
didn't
what
mention
the
but-
D in MGD means.
Right,
Yes.
no, but except that there was in the previous, anyway, I won't say about the previous, but this one has, will be discharged during the full calendar day, midnight to midnight, which means that with 3 million gallon brine storage ponds, we will be discharging initially, maybe only once every 3 or 4 days, one day in 3 or 4, be filling up the tanks and then discharging them.
Right. And I understand those, well, are those tanks or are those open ponds?
Open ponds.
And I understand there's concern staff has that those open ponds being exposed for 3 days to birds and everything else, we're not really sure what we would find at the end of 3 days in some of that water. But I guess that's not part of the engineering that goes into this report of waste discharge. Is that correct?
Not the engineering, but it would be part of the industrial waste permit that the water quality necessary for us to accept the water, which might require removal of precipitated salt or maybe even algae if it were excessive or something.
So there might be additional treatment steps that CalAm would have to engage in this brine discharge as a consequence of a future process that we go through with respect to industrial waste discharge. Or would we have to?
No, we
that
wouldn't,
treatment?
no, but they
No.
potentially might need to filter the water one more time.
So if we were doing this report of waste discharge and the input was that CalAm would only need a 2.2 MGD plant, would that have changed any of the engineering calculations?
No. No.
No, it would just change the frequency, like how long the water's sitting there before it gets pumped out.
Right.
Because the rate of pumping is what the modeling was predicated on.
Right. I think the intent or the expectation was that the initial plant would start up at, I think, about like 1.4 MGD of brine. And so we were always in a situation where we couldn't have, well, we didn't know before the modeling.
So you're saying it would not change the engineering design of the outfall, but it would change the operating parameters over which it could be used? And would that then shorten or extend the amount of time that Brian would have to sit in those holding ponds?
Right, the lower the reduction of brine, the longer that it would sit in
those ponds.
Yes.
Okay. Which could have ramifications when we get to the industrial waste discharge piece. Would a 2.2 MGD plant have any bearing on this $60,000 a year permanent fee that would have to be paid if we had designed this from the beginning on a 2.2 MGD plant? In other words, would the state still be charging us 60 grand a year for this same report, amended report of waste discharge or not?
So, yes, Matt.
I'm pretty sure the fee would be the same because the water board is going to calculate the annual permit fee based on the total maximum daily flow. And so they're going to factor in the worst case scenario, which will be the days when Cal-Am is discharging into the outfall. So I would expect the fee to essentially be the same if there were a hypothetical smaller desal facility.
Well, it may not be, from what we're hearing from the CPUC, this may not be a hypothetical discussion, but we don't know yet. Did any of this work in any way contemplate the potential additional discharges from the other two contemplated projects?
No.
That might come online in the next 25 years, maybe sooner even than Cal-Am's need.
Right. So yeah, again, the NPDES window is 5-year permit. And yes. So we did not look at Marina Coast or the groundwater projects.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, let's take it out for public comment.
We will go ahead and hear from Michael Bear. Go ahead, Mr. Bear.
Wow, I've got a whole lot of new information. I want to let you guys know that I looked into this outfall very deeply during the EIR process in 2018, and I thought it was insufficient. Now I learned you're getting rid of the diffusers, I guess because pressure issues like the engineering makes it difficult. But the way I look at it is you're dumbing down. There's going to be more salt outfall, more brine going in and not being diffused into the water column, but tending to sink. I want to remind everybody, brine is heavier. So that means it tends to sink. And if the currents aren't strong, it's on a flat bottom out there, that you could build up a nice big salt pond right out there at the end of the outfall. So there's a lot here. I got 2 minutes to go. I got a couple of questions. What is your involvement and or liability once the effluent leaves the outfall? I think I have an idea. I got to get up to speed here. I had a nice friendly cup of coffee with Paul Sciutto. Not even the last time we had a cup of coffee. I think it was the time before. So I'm going back a few years here. And I was asking because I'm very concerned because during this whole Coastal Commission process, one of the things that came up is what's happening out there at the end of the outfall could be a squid nursery. And a number of biologists talked about that. It's a flat sandy bottom and squids like to lay their eggs there. And I don't need to remind you that we have a squid fisher industry. And so my question is, has there been a biosurvey of what's going on at the end of is it a squid nursery? Because Paul didn't know. And the answer from Paul, and years ago, and it may have changed, was that that's really up to the Monterey Bay Marine Sanctuary to determine if what you're sending out of the outfall with all this salt water is poison. And I remind you, brine is saltier. And so are you going to be destroying the squid nurseries? And he didn't know. He said that is for the Monterey Bay Marine Sanctuary to determine. And so what I really want to know, is there a biosurvey? Has anybody looked at what is living at the end of that outfall? And even if it's not in your realm of liability, you are citizens of the Monterey Peninsula, and you have a responsibility to pressure the Monterey Bay Marine Sanctuary to find the answer to that question before you start poisoning the fishery. So I've got some more things to find out about. And, you know, they didn't even have these salt ponds out there. It was all just going to flow out. And the final question, I got 14 seconds, and you may not know, but how much is Cal-Am saving by dummying down this diffuser thing? They're making it even less efficient than it was before. So I appeal to you as Monterey Peninsula citizens to save our sanctuary, even if the Monterey Bay Sanctuary won't. Thank you very much.
Okay, we will now hear from Melody Chrislock. Go ahead, Ms. Chrislock.
Melody Chrislock for Public Water Now. We are also a party, like M1W is, to the proceeding at the CPUC. And I wanted to update you and the public on this to some degree. The proposed decision is still undecided at the CPUC and won't be heard until July 24th at the earliest, because there is a problem with the demand numbers. Even Senator Laird has called the CPUC out on this. Cal-Am submitted a 25-year demand forecast that contains a 2,000 acre-foot a year error. It's obvious there is a problem, and the CPUC is caught between the truth and Cal-Am's lobbying, aka bullying. Does anyone here believe that the peninsula's population will increase by 50% in the next 25 years? Cal-Am's demand numbers predict a 50% increase in demand for water over the next 25 years. That would require a 50% increase in population. That's impossible. That's the problem the CPUC is wrestling with. AMBEG is predicting a 12% population growth. Even if the CPUC ignores the facts and passes this, the CPUC's current proposed decision only recognizes 2,000 acre-feet of additional demand beyond the CPUC's accepted 2050 supply demand. So you've got 2,000 acre-feet. That's not enough to justify the desal plant Cal-Am has proposed. You've got the cart before the horse here, I think. There's no point in voting on this now. Wasting time and money on a project that the CPUC may never approve makes no sense for a responsible public agency. Remember, there may be no cost to M1W, but when you say Cal-Am pays, it's really every household on the peninsula that gets the bill. We don't want to pay for a project that is not needed and may never be built. Please don't bend to Cal-Am's pressuring. On behalf of Cal-Am's peninsula customers, we ask you to wait on this. What is the rush? There is no rush. There's so many balls in the air on this right now. Let the CPUC sort it out before you decide. Thank you.
Okay, we will now hear from Susan Scavone. Go ahead, Ms. Scavone.
Thank you. I think it's extremely premature for one to be spending a lot of staff time on amending the ROWD to accommodate Cal-Am's brine discharge for a project that has many more hoops to complete before getting to this point. In fact, from the comments from the Central Coast Regional Water Quality Board, it's obvious the design of the supposed brine reduction device was concerning, inadequate, and untested, with no history of use and no real evaluation of possible marine life impacts or adequate inspections about it. Even with a newly amended ROWD, it still appears to me to be an inadequate plan. The need for an amended EIR is not yet met, among other deficits and additional permits. Despite the engineering update, it all still sounds like throwing mud on the wall to see if it sticks, rather than truly scientifically peer review engineering practice that can be cited and substantiated. And then there's the continued requirement of staff time that needs to be invested, which robs time for other M1 projects that could be accomplished. It just shows the typical sloppy but expensive efforts Cal-Am makes for meeting environmental quality requirements for their projects, all while using public agency time and energy. Even if Cal-Am is paying the expense, now nearly $1.5 million, that cost is being passed on to us as ratepayers, despite the fact that the actual desal is in real-time limbo, given other conditions Cal-Am must meet that have not yet been met. These permits are not limited to, but include the State Land Division's approval for their faulty slant wells, final CPUC approval for a supply and demand number, and the CPUC approval for a smaller and changed desal project, which will require additional permitting and reviews, taking a lot of time. Please put this effort off until some of these key decisions have been made to justify the effort. Thank you.
Anybody else for public comment?
Okay, we will now hear from Anna Thompson. Go ahead, Ms. Thompson.
Anna Thompson, yes, I agree with the melody and with Susan Schiavone. This is premature. Wait on this until the CPUC makes a decision on the 2050 demand numbers. Please stop with this effort here until we know better. There is Cal-Am does not have permission to move ahead with its desal plant, and will be the Monterey One Water will be wasting ratepayers' money on a project that is years away, and most likely is never going to be built because we don't need this Cal-Am desalination plant. Period. Thank you for listening.
Okay, with that, we'll go ahead and close public comment and bring it back to the board for motion and deliberation. Please, Dr. Moore.
Sorry, I've got a couple more questions. I don't know if we have any fellow directors who are experts like I'm not in outfall hydrodynamics. So if I understood what you said earlier in answer to some of my questions and other questions, my understanding is you're saying that whether Cal-Am would actually build a 5.88 to 8.66 MGD plant or a 4.4 MGD plant or a 2.2 MGD plant, the engineering and the changes that we would need to make to the outfall are all the same. And the costs to us for permitting fees and so forth going forward would be all the same. Is that a correct understanding? Or is it true that if this were designed for that smaller 2.2 MGD, that there would be fewer of these duckbill emitters that had to be changed out or whatever, some other change?
Yeah, there'd be no change.
No change in anything.
Again, I don't think so.
I'm just trying to figure out
Yeah,
how this.
no, I mean, I'm thinking about the maximum flow rate.
Yeah, I know, and I'm
in terms of fees, I'm not sure. But as long as it's maximum flow rate, then I don't think anything changes. The diffusers don't change. This is designed to be able to get sufficient dilution to meet the ocean plant, which means less than 2 parts per thousand increase in salinity. So by the time it gets to the edge of the zone of initial dilution, it's, I don't know, it's just fine.
And I guess I'm still having trouble wrapping my head around how a smaller amount of brine produced per day would not decrease the maximum flow rate, et cetera.
So may I try? I will say, Bob, if anybody's an expert in this room on this, it's Bob, but I want to try and elaborate on this because it's a little bit counterintuitive.
Right.
The way the outfall has to work is you actually have to have a heavy enough flow so that when it hits these diffusers that are raised up at an angle, it has enough velocity to elevate this plume up above the seafloor. That's why this outfall is designed for a minimum of 5.8 million gallons per day. All right. That's what drives the need for the so-called brine equalization storage. So whether it's a large plant or a small plant, they're going to have to discharge a minimum of 5.8 million gallons per day over a 24-hour period of time. So it's either going to be, every 3 or 4 days or daily. So if they make a smaller plant, it's going to decrease the frequency. It might be once every 5 or 6 days. If they increase the size of the plant, then they could be discharging every day. But they're always going to have to discharge at that minimum of 5.8 MGD to achieve dilution.
But is that based on this fixed number of new emitters?
No, well, I mean, all the calculations were based on the number, the 158 diffusers.
And just to be clear, we currently have
We
158 diffusers.
currently have
in place?
129.
129.
So we're talking about adding 29 more and leaving 10 of the plugged diffuser ports still plugged.
So we have, give me the numbers again. We currently have
129, and
all of which are plugged, none of which are plugged, or some
none of which are plugged. They all have a horizontal duct bill.
So we have other ports is where he's
we
getting at.
we have
So there's 39 ports out there still that we could
Okay.
add diffusers to.
unused.
For Cal-Am, we're going to add 29. There are going to be 10 ports that are unused still in the pipe.
Okay. Would we be able to achieve those velocities at the ports for a smaller 2.2 MGD plant with only 10 new diffusers?
No, so the point I think Matt was trying to make is whether it's a 1 MGD plant or a 6 MGD plant, the flow rate of brine has to be substantive enough, the flow rate, to meet the velocities to get it to go out. So if we have a 1 MGD plant, which I know I'm just fantasizing, then you just take a longer time to fill those 6 million gallons of ponds. When they're filled, then you pump out. If you have a 6 MGD plant, maybe it's that every day you're going to the ponds and you're pumping out. So the size of the plant is not the controlling factor. It's the flow rate required and therefore the storage at the site.
Could I try to jump in here for a second? You were speaking to earlier in regards to holding it and the impact that has. That would have to get its own approval. How does that work in conjunction with the request that's going to the Regional Water Board here? Is there any? Are they completely different?
So they're different. They're entirely different. All I was trying to mention earlier is without certainty from either the CPUC and or Cal-Am on the size of the plant, we can't sit here and tell you that the water's going to be pumped every day, so it's fresh, or the water's going to be sitting there for 4 days. We just don't know because there's uncertainty on what's going to be approved and designed and how it's going to be operated. But there are two separate processes. The one Bob is asking for the ROWD on, and then at some later date, years down the line, an industrial waste permit that comes from us, does not come from the regional board or anyone else.
And that would be required before operation.
Absolutely.
Okay. Did you have any other questions? Any other comments, questions? Please.
And I think we, excuse me, I think we talked about this when this first came up, but I'm just wanting to kind of get the degree of certainty that we have with this process of diffusion in terms of how certain we are that there aren't any negative environmental consequences?
And actually, as you asked that question, it does remind me of the questions that came up during the public comment. So I would see if staff could answer some of those kind of tied into that. So I heard the risk of liability to our agency, the bio survey impact, the environmental impact. And then there was this statement made around kind of watering down, pun intended. You like it? You like it? Sorry, I had to break the ice a little bit. Watering down the diffuser to this kind of more simplified process. I know we talked about that during the Recycled Water Committee meeting, but it might be helpful to kind of describe the level of certainty we have in this, our confidence level based off of the change.
I'll start. Maybe you can
Okay.
elaborate. So, first of all, I want to say that we have brought in the best scientists to model how this outfall will behave in the marine environment. But the Regional Water Quality Control Board is ultimately going to be the authority on deciding if this is adequately protective of marine life in that environment. There is a separate parallel effort called a marine life mortality study that there's a marine science group called Applied Marine Sciences who is preparing that study. And they're doing a sort of classic before and after analysis to more closely predict how this will affect marine life in that environment. With regards to the risers with the duckbill valves, imagine these 60-degree angle risers, and it literally looks like a duckbill valve. It's a rubber, essentially like a check valve, so that the wastewater goes out and seawater doesn't back up into the outfall pipe. They've simply refined the material type, the stiffness of it, so that they can get the right balance of the water being able to jet out at a particular velocity to achieve this buoyant plume and not smother the seafloor with salt, but also not jet out at such a high velocity that it is harmful to marine life that might be swimming by. You know, the velocity could literally create turbulence that could be harmful to those that marine life. So I believe these scientists have found that right balance, and all of those details are contained in the attachments to that report of waste discharge. And the marine scientists at the Water Quality Control Board will essentially be behaving as that sort of third-party peer review of this work.
I think also to Supervisor Church's question, how certain are we? We're certain on the modeling, it's modeling. Please understand that. So as Matt and Bob said, we have to figure out, or the regional board is going to make sure that we meet the permit and the ocean plan and everything else. The liability, I think there was one of those questions of like, who has that liability? It's our permit. It's Monterey One's permit. Everything is our liability. So hence the reason we're trying to be so careful and do an adequate job of analysis and letting the regional board do their work. Ultimately, if something were to occur, I don't know that we've discussed it necessarily. My opinion is you'd shut them down just like you would any discharger that isn't complying with a permit. I mean, it's pretty simple in that sense, but it's our permit. It's not Cal-Am, so they're paying to get something done on our infrastructure with our liability and our expertise. I never want you to forget that, because you're getting lobbed in questions all over the place. People are talking to the regional board. It's ours, and we're the ones that should be interacting with the regional board. It shouldn't be anyone else, and it's ultimately your decision. There was another question on, I still don't know anything about a squid nursery, so I'll defer to Bob on that one.
So I know historically we did lots of different marine organism surveys way back when. And I think Caliam did various surveys also. Yeah, so I mean, well, I've never seen squid down there on the bottom, but I've seen lots of fish. The experts suggest that this new proposal of 158 diffusers that are slightly less stiff will reduce the marine mortality rate, and that's one of the reasons that they came up with this. So I would also mention that the smaller the brine discharge, the harder it is to permit. Back before, when we worked on a larger desal facility, it was much easier to discharge, much easier.
Is it because you're not holding on to the water?
No, it's just the if you have more, then you can get the velocity, as Matt was mentioning, just from the volume of the flow. And yeah, and so actually, once you get up, I can't remember, it's about 4 or 5, 6 million gallons of secondary effluent, you do get a buoyant flume. It doesn't sink back down. It just goes up. Anyway.
Just one follow-up on something you just said, that the less of this brine we put in the outfall, the harder it is to meet the permit. But is that completely true as you go to zero? And the reason I ask the question is our current permit allows us to put water into the ocean. Monterey Bay is somewhere in the vicinity of 32,000 parts per million total dissolved solids. The water we're currently putting into the bay is what? 1,000 parts per million total dissolved solids?
Yeah. Right.
So right now, we could put a fair amount, I should think, of briny water mixed with our own effluent, and we wouldn't yet even reach 32,000 parts per million TDS. At what rate would we of briny disposal? And I realize the TDS of the brine depends on the operation of the desal plant, but roughly speaking, how much could we discharge without doing anything other than putting essentially seawater into the sea?
So we did not model that. We did model, though, down, I mean, it's zero brine and just a whole range of different flow rates of brine, plus different flow rates of reverse osmosis concentrate from the AWPF, plus a whole range of secondary effluent. And just a really complicated combination of those 3 parameters. And then our consultants developed this lovely stair-step system of different dilution rates that would meet all the requirements within a certain range of all those flows. So it's, yes, there are lots of situations where you could put brine in and it would be fine, but to get that covered by a permit, well, it just excludes just so many other times when there's more or less water. And we have to, yeah, it's all modeled based on AWPF going down at some points, maybe no secondary effluent, maybe we lose power and we have all secondary effluent from the whole facility. So, I mean, all those things are taken into consideration. We take the lowest dilution rate within a certain range.
And thus, the need for brine mixing structure on our property at some point, right?
What I'm not sure I understand the question.
So if at some point we are currently mixing brine from the AWPF into regular effluent, we're doing that somewhere, right? So
Right.
there's an existing brine mixing
Oh,
process or structure.
So we purposely don't call the reverse osmosis concentrate brine since it's much less salty than seawater.
Right.
But we do have a mixing structure where it shoots down. We have a little baffle there and a circulation pump where we do sample. The brine mixing structure is, better engineered to give us really uniform dilution of all three waters.
Right. Given the variability that you've just described.
Yes.
Thank you.
I just have one more question, and I'm changing tax a little bit. The thing that I'm most concerned about with this is as it relates to the CPUC proceedings. And so I guess that's my question for staff. How could the implications of the CPUC proceeding impact our decision today? And the thing I'm thinking about as the mayor of a city that's a ratepayer to Cal-Am, we're going to bear the brunt of the costs associated with this. So it's easy for us to sit here today and say that, and it's not our money, but half the people on this board's residents are impacted by the costs associated with this. So that's my question for staff.
So at this point, the CPUC Phase 2 decision on supply and demand analysis is supposed to be adopted or made final on July 24th. At that point, if the current decision is finalized, my understanding, and I bet you it's different between whether it be Cal-Am talking about it or the Water Management District, is that the long-term demands in the community would require an additional water supply, potentially not as large as like the 6.4 MGD plant, desal plant that we've talked about, but operating something less than that. So that would just provide more certainty to how long brine would sit in those ponds before coming back to our plant, into our outfall. Conversely, I guess the CPUC could certainly go, you know what, I think the long-term demands are going to be higher, which would then indicate to Cal-Am, hey, we need to have a bigger desal plant. So maybe instead of 2.2 or whatever we've talked about, it's 4.8 or 6.4. So then that gets into what Matt talked about, is that brine is just coming every day through our treatment plant. So there is some variability on how it's operated, but as Bob mentioned, the modeling sort of is not dependent on the size of the plant. It's dependent on the size of those two ponds.
What if it's smaller? What if the amount is less?
So even if it's even more or less, that from an operational standpoint, I think that could become more problematic for us, because water could be sitting there for, I don't know, let's say a week, and then we're going to try to bring it through our outfall. So from an industrial waste permit perspective, as Bob mentioned, there'd be some additional treatment we would require before anything comes through our outfall. Whether it be, you never know if there's going to be algae, or if there's, I think, Director Moore said, what if there's other nutrients that land in that water? There's some changes that could occur. So it's the unknown that how it's going to be operated is the only thing that the CPUC proceeding may help illuminate.
I think maybe to be more direct with my question, if it's less, does that, and I'm asking a rhetorical question, right? But can that impact the opportunity for Cal-Am's desal project, and completely eliminate the need for this to all move forward in the first place? a little bit rhetorical. You don't have to answer that. It's
Thank
okay.
you.
I think that that's my biggest concern. I'm really split on where I stand with this personally. I mean, to a certain extent, I imagine that the board's probably going to support this. But I think that if it allows us to have a little bit more certainty in regards to the direction that we're going in, to delay until next month, I kind of put that on the table as well, to have a better sense of where this is going to fall, and give us more certainty around where Cal-Am ratepayers are going to be impacted as it relates to this project moving forward.
So what you're suggesting is a 4-week delay? Because in theory, the CPUC comes out on the 24th. We have a board meeting on the 28th. Bob, what does that do to Cal-Am's schedule? Because I know there was discussion of how long it takes the regional board to approve this thing. So is that a big deal? Is it just so the board understands impacts?
Yeah, so I mean, one impact is we're just in the process of trying to set up the first meeting with the regional board sometime in January between the 14th and the 31st.
In July?
In July, sorry,
Okay.
yes, sorry, in July. That's right. 2025, yes.
Just get this down.
Right. So that's, they're anxious to see. Yeah, I mean, again, they gave us the list of how the first ROWD was incomplete. They're anxious to get this new one, and then they're anxious to meet with us to talk about it. And as they start their process of reviewing it, I don't know. I mean, delay is delay. This is a critical path for Cal-Am.
Please.
I would like to make a motion that we authorize the submittal of the amended report.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. I saw a hand up over here somewhere. Was it you? I got the second. Any discussion on the motion?
Other than I'm fairly split, although fewer of the ratepayers within Marina Coast would be affected by these costs coming out of their pocket to pay future Cal-Am fees. I am supposed to be wearing a hat looking after all of our ratepayers across all of the sectors of Monterey One Water service area. So I may end up just recording a no vote if for no other reason than to say that the community is a bit split on this particular topic. And I'd certainly be in favor of the chair's suggestion of a 1-month delay. I'm not sure I see that would prevent staff from meeting with the Regional Water Quality Control Board and displaying what would at that point be proposed work that might or might not be approved in July, but nonetheless, thank you.
Okay. I'm probably with you. I don't want to unnecessarily delay Cal-Am's efforts as a partner with our agency, but I am concerned around the cost and the implications here. So any last minute comments before we call for the question? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Nope. Was there a no? So there was
2 noes.
3 noes.
3 noes.
Okay.
Director Moore, Garcia, Rizola, and Williamson.
Sorry.
Okay, that was fun. Okay. 10B, approve amendment number 4 to amended and restated water recycling agreement between Monterey One Water and Monterey County Water Resources Agency. I said that without stumbling over it. Pass it to Paul for staff presentation.
Thank you, Chair Williamson. So as you all know, we have been working with the Monterey County Water Resources Agency over the last year plus in trying to address some of the identified issues that came out of the audit that the County and Water Resources Agency had on Monterey One Water in regards to our amended and restated water recycling agreement. That water recycling agreement was signed, was put into effect back in 2016, and that's what we've been operating under ever since.
Sorry about that. That came from his computer.
I thought I was going to have like a drum roll or something. So you'll see the some additional history in the agenda item itself about the amendments and things that have occurred. I'm going to say probably R and I have been meeting every 2 weeks, plus or minus, and staff potentially more. What we decided to focus on to rectify some of the issues that were identified is to look specifically at sections 7 and 8 of the amended and restated water recycling agreement. Those sections have to do primarily with our budgeting process, accounting protocols, and so on. Over a number of months, what we have before you is agreed upon staff changes to implement these accounting protocols and reporting and such. What I'd like to do, if it's okay, is to have Johanna, who was intimately involved in the process, describe what occurred, what are the major changes, and how we're going to be moving forward. And then certainly Ara has been kind enough to attend tonight, General Manager at Monterey County Water Resources Agency, and I'd like him to have the opportunity to speak as well. So with that, unless there's any questions, I would turn it over to Johanna.
So we have been meeting with WRS staff since last December to make amendments to the agreement, specifically, as Paul was saying, to section 7 and 8. This just adds more checks and balances to ensure communication between the agencies and more compliance with the agreement itself. We're updating the processes for how O&M budgets are done. We define the indirect charges for fiscal years 24-25 and 25-26, and a path moving forward on how to address those cost charges for future fiscal years. And then we added timelines as to when the reports are due, when we have meetings, when we're getting together to define budgets for the next fiscal years. That was the focus of these two sections.
Any questions on what Johanna just reported out? Okay. Ara? And thank you for being here and listening to that very interesting discussion.
It was indeed interesting. Good evening, Ara Ashtarian, General Manager, Water Resources Agency. I really just wanted to come today and to thank Monterey One Water, Paul and his staff, commend them for the work and the commitment that they've demonstrated in making these revisions. I know a year seems like a long time, but within that time, we went through our annual fiscal year budgeting process. M1W's gone through a lot of change in its financial department. And so, there's been a lot of change that's been occurring, and it's not always evident when folks say, oh, that took a year, and it's all like, we covered a lot of ground. I'd also like to thank Directors Moore and Williamson and Habino for their willingness to participate on our leadership group and give guidance when it's not only needed, but most helpful. That's been a great tool going forward. I do agree with Johanna. I think one of the best things that comes out of the revision are the improved communication practices. And I think when we look back at the audit results, now a year ago, I think some of the situation that we found ourselves in related to that lack of communication, or said differently, taking a 10-year-old agreement a bit for granted. And so I think the systems that we've put in place will help ensure that we don't find ourselves back there again, and will make not only the accounting, but the accountability and the transparency much greater going forward. So just want to, again, thank you all for the work that we've put in. There are other areas of the agreement that will require further attention. We'll keep at it. But this is an important and significant step forward. So thank you.
Thanks, Laura.
Awesome. Thank you for the presentation. I'll just kind of jump in quickly here and say I equally appreciate the conversations. I think the transparency is helpful, and I don't think it was an intentional thing on either side. And I think that the benefit is of all of our stakeholders, and they benefit from that open dialogue communication to make sure that we're utilizing our tax dollars, our public dollars, to the best of our ability. So I look forward to the ongoing discussions, and I think this is a good step in the process to keep us moving forward. So thank you, Ara and Paul, for leading the effort there. Any other questions, thoughts? Please.
Thank you for your kind words. And, this was a situation a year and a half or so ago that could have gone badly south for both agencies in a very controversial and confrontational way. And your leadership, Mike Labar's leadership, Matt's leadership and willingness to meet with us is very much appreciated. And I agree with you. I think we've come to a much better place through this process, and look forward to many more years of serving you and your stakeholders. Thanks.
All right, with that, oh, please.
I just kind of want to echo the same things, even though I haven't been on that leadership committee too long. I've only been through a couple of meetings, but just want to say thank you to staff for all your hard work on this. It's definitely pretty thorough framework of checks and balances, and I think staff on both sides have worked diligently on this, and congrats on putting something really great together.
Move approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded. We'll take it out to the public. Anybody in the public wish to speak on this item? I'm not seeing any takers, so we'll bring it back to the board. Any last minute comments?
Just one, Your Honor, just wanted to thank everybody for working on this at staff and on the leadership committee. And I remember it wasn't such a great conversation a year ago, so good job. Thank you.
Awesome. All right, I'll entertain a motion.
We have a motion and a second on the floor.
Oh, you're right. We did that before. All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. We'll go to item number 11, staff reports.
I just have a very quick one, and I'll turn it over to others. I had the opportunity last week to attend the Pacific Northwest Water Reuse Summit. It was up in Portland, and just provide an update on Water Reuse National and their supporting of all the state sections throughout the country. It's always interesting to me to attend some of these functions. How many people are aware of Monterey One Water and our recycling efforts, both on the ag and the potable side? In fact, although I was representing Water Reuse National, I would say 80% of the questions I received was on our projects and, frankly, the energy projects we're pursuing. So that was it was fun to interact with a different section, see what their drivers are for water reuse and the type of projects they have going before them. So with that.
John, you go to. Yes, good evening again. I'm Matt Thompson, your Director of Engineering. I'm very pleased to introduce the newest addition to our engineering team, our new Assistant Engineer, Kota Nishiguchi. Kota has his bachelor's degree in Civil and Environmental Engineering from UC Davis, a very good engineering school, as you may know. It's Paul's alma mater. But if that wasn't good enough, he went up to the University of Washington and got his master's degree in Civil and Environmental Engineering. Excellent education. He's worked as a consultant. He's, for the past several years, he's worked for Kings County, Washington, at one of the largest wastewater treatment plants in Washington State. It's called West Point, serves the greater Seattle area. And so we're very pleased that Kota is coming back to California, where he was raised, and has come to work for us. He's going to greatly expand our ability to deliver capital projects. We anticipate Kota is going to be getting involved in engineering's next big initiative, which is our solids handling and resource recovery improvements project, which we'll be bringing to you in July. So please join me in welcoming Coda. Thank you.
Give it up for Coda. Woo!
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Matt for bragging about me so that I'm not have to, and for introducing me to you, the members of the board. And I'm happy to join the team. Thank you.
Awesome.
Lucky to have you.
Welcome, Coda. We had the opportunity to greet him at the Recycled Water Committee meeting, but with a larger audience, we welcome you, Coda, to the team and look forward to everything that you're going to bring to us. Hopefully it's a mutually shared experience there. So welcome aboard. Anything else from staff?
Oh, Rachel?
Welcome back.
Actually, that should have been like the first thing I said. We're welcoming Rachel back. She actually started last Friday, right? Hold it.
Friday before.
Friday before.
I walked in, I had no idea she was here. It took me a second to register it.
Yes. Well, in my absence, the team has had a very busy month showcasing Monterey One Water with diverse stakeholders. So I just wanted to give a really big shout out to Johanna, who's been helping lead the team, and to Michelle Bumgardner, our community liaison, and to the ops team, who have been really holding it down while I've been out and we've been down a director, specifically related to tours. So I have to cheat since I wasn't here for the full month. So tours this month included the Middlebury Institute of International Studies, our partners from the Monterey County Water Resources Agency. We had peers from the San Francisco Public Utilities down. Leadership Monterey County came out last week, which our own Matt Thompson is a part of this year. And then we had staff from Senator Schiff's office as well. So really busy month. Thank you to the team for sharing our mission, our vision, our values with all of these important stakeholders. Second thing, community project request. I'm pleased to share that in the spring, Monterey One Water submitted to our local elected officials representing us at a federal level our domestic energy production products that are our project that is going to produce renewable energy on site. And Senator Padilla has actually picked that project up and will be advocating it to the next round. And this is actually a really big deal this year because they changed the way the Senate can put forward and advocate for projects. And so within basically the funding bucket that we applied under, Senator Padilla only had 40 projects that he could put forward this year. And he selected Monterey One Water as one of those projects. So don't get too excited because it's not $1 million in our hands. There are many, many steps that we have to go through to actually get that project through the various committee markups into a budget bill for the following fiscal year. But I think kudos out to the team because we've made it one step further in that process. And then finally, I do just want to let you know that we are watching closely the reconciliation process that is happening, vote on the Senate floor now, and how that may impact the investment tax credit at a federal level. You may have heard us share in previous board meetings that we are watching that. You might hear us call it the ITC, as the previous administration had funding related to renewable energy. It seems this administration has a specific focus on pulling things related to solar and wind. So we are still hopeful that the ITC will remain for other domestic energy production, such as the efforts that we are doing, but we're watching it closely, and if needed, we'll provide you future updates as we see what goes into this reconciliation bill that the president is hoping comes across his desk by this Friday. And that's all I have. Thank
What a
you.
way to come back, Rachel. Wow. Coming all with the good news and everything. All right. Is it from staff?
Yep.
All right. Awesome. With that, we will move on to item number 12, board member comments reports. Talkative group tonight. All right, move on to 13 for public comments on closed session items. There's 2 items. 14A is conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation. And item 14B is conference with labor negotiator, unrepresented employee, executive officer, general manager. Anybody in the public wish to speak on either of those items? All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and adjourn to closed session.
Rachel, you're gonna tell them the project involves.
It's 8:14. The board is adjourned from closed session. There's no reportable action. Chair Williamson, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Thank